Since the relatively official Uvalde report has been released, there have been quite a few people doing reviews of the report in conjunction with the video that was released also. And it's significant. It's long. It's also very, very difficult to watch and listen to. It's painful. It evokes quite a bit of emotion as you go through the process and you were aware of what was taking place throughout the course of the video and the commentary and the reporting. And there are obviously quite a few glaring issues, blatant miscalculations, missteps, much more than poor decision making. And there are quite a few things that I and many other people could point out. So I'm going to do it in pieces based on my experience and my understanding of these scenarios. What got my attention just recently is part of the report that states that Police Chief Pete Arredondo reported to the scene early on without his radios. And among the many things that jumped out at me during the review of the report, this was significant as a leader. I suspect that this was stated by his attorney, or by the organization's attorney. I suspect that this might have been some form of apologetics, some form of rationalization for why he was there without a radio. And so what they're stating is that the police chief made a decision not to have his radios because he wanted to have his hands on his weapon in the event that he was confronted by the shooter. Now let's think about that. What is a police chief's job? And there are leadership positions throughout the organization that have similar responsibilities to a different degree. But a police chief's job is not to be the one with his finger on the trigger. That's not your job. Right? When you arrive on scene, whoever was there prior to you was in charge of that scene. And we understand that. Right? When the police chief arrives, unless there's some other SOP in place, you are now in command and control of that environment, of that scenario. So if you are in command and control of the scenario, you are not the one being commanded or controlled. You are not the one being directed to move to certain areas, to engage targets. You are not being directed to take positions of overwatch or security or perimeter. That's not your job. Your job as a leader in a hostile or combat environment is to stay back, try and understand the environment in its totality, the various threats, the location of those threats, the timing, and to understand the positions and movement of your forces so that you can place them effectively to achieve whatever goal you're attempting to achieve, right? That is your job, command and control. So your weapon as a leader in one of these environments is your radio. That is your primary tool. Being a leader, whether it's in law enforcement or in a military action, being a leader means your weapon is your ability to communicate. Not having your radios, your ability to communicate immediately and effectively with the people that you are coordinating is like is like a conductor in front of an orchestra with his hands tied behind his back. It's like a quarterback on a field without a football. Feet tied together, hands tied, blinders on. You have to be able to communicate. And so I believe that either one, in the stress and duress of being confronted with this scenario, moving towards to the school, I think he forgot his radios. I think he probably grabbed a bunch of stuff and took off and got on site. That's option one. Option two, which to me is worse, right? Because option one means that you weren't trained efficiently and significantly. You didn't get your reps in. You're not understanding your responsibility as well because you're not training enough, and you thought threat, go to threat, and you forgot your radios. That's potential scenario number one. Scenario number two is you actually did choose not to get to grab your radio, and you had your hand on your gun and you went there, and you thought that when you got there you were going to get online like the rest of your troops, your law enforcement officers, and you were going to go seek out and end the threat. Which means you were also poorly trained, but also stupid as hell, because now you don't understand your role. You should never have been in that seat if that's what you think. At no time it's amazing how advanced we are, right? We're so advanced in modern technology, in modern time. We have all these methods to communicate. At no time ever in the history of humans killing other humans in groups has a leader decided, I don't need to be able to communicate with the people I'm controlling to go try and kill those people or that person. At no time has a leader ever chosen not to be able to communicate. 1,000 years ago, they were incredibly effective at finding ways to communicate without modern technology. They didn't have radios. They didn't have the internet. They used drums as an audio signal for different actions to take in different formations. They used flags. The idea of flags that we have now today, guidons. These flags were all intended to identify different elements and different units and different organizations on this vast battlefield or even small battlefield. And other flags were used to indicate movement, to indicate actions to take or strategies to employ. So communication has always been a part of warfare. And believe it or not, if you are engaging a threat against you, against other people, against innocents, while you're in it, you are at war. It is effectively very, very similar. The only difference is that there's an interspersed population of people who are not involved in those engagements. There are civilians involved, non-combatants. But the person that you're trying to seek out that is a threat, guess what? You are at war with that individual. You are now in a battle space. In that battle space, you must have command and control over your elements. So among the many, many, many failures in Uvalde, Police Chief Arredondo, I won't say that was number one, but that was probably up there. Number two. Number one, I would say, was your people were not effectively trained. And because they were not effectively trained, they were not confident. And because they were not confident, they were not competent. And they made a series of abject, failed, objectively failed decisions. Cowardly, tactically, strategically inappropriate decisions. And 19 children and 2 adults were murdered.